Tap, filtered tap, or distilled water for fluid art? Which is better? I'm going to conduct 2 experiments to find out. The first experiment will be with freshly mixed paints mixed with tap, filtered and distilled water. And the second experiment will be testing tap, filtered tap and distilled water in pouring paints that have been stored for over 4 weeks. Let's go. Okay, so here's the first experiment. I've just mixed all these paints using the same ratio of paint, Floetrol and water. But the difference is the ones on the left have all been mixed with tap water, the ones at the top have been mixed with filtered water, and the ones on the right have been mixed with distilled water. I'm going to start off with the tap water mixed paints, and I'm going to use the same pour painting technique for each painting, so we've got a better chance of seeing if there's a difference between them. I've sped up the painting process because I know that you're eager to see the results, but the technique that I'm using here is called a ghost swipe. I've created a more detailed video of the ghost swipe technique, so if you want to learn more about how to do this, check out the link above in the top right. I'll also add it in the description below. So that's the tap water painting done. Now let's move on to the filtered water painting and see if there's a difference. You can see here that I'm using canvas panels. I always use small canvas panels to conduct experiments because they're cheap. You can normally pick up a pack of 3 for about $1. They have a small surface area, so that means I'm not wasting a lot of paint, but at the same time I get a good idea of how the painting's going to turn out if I'm planning on creating a painting on a much larger canvas. So since I've been doing this, I've saved having to scrape and waste so much paint and potentially ruining my large expensive canvases. Just a little tip I thought I'd share with you all. Right, now onto the distilled water. Once I've done this painting, we're going to take a closer look at each of them, and then I'm going to put all 3 paintings together on the screen so we can see them side by side to see if we can see any differences in the paint or the paintings between the tap, the filtered and the distilled water. After that, we're going to go on to our second experiment, looking at whether there's a difference with paints that have been stored. Okay, now let's have a closer look. So this is the tap water painting. It's good cells. Doesn't look like there's any distortion on here. This is the filtered. Doesn't look any different. Still good cells are being held together. Looks pretty similar. And the distilled water. Again, the colours are a little bit different, but that's probably how I move the paint. The cells look the same. I don't really see much of a difference, do you? Okay, and here are the 3 paintings together. The top one's the tap, left one's filtered, and right one's distilled. It doesn't look to me like there's any difference in the paint or any of these paintings, but let me know down in the comments below if you see something that I don't. Okay, so let's see if mixing your paints with tap, filtered tap and distilled water and then storing them for a long period of time makes a difference. I'm going to conduct this experiment a little differently to the first one, so the video isn't so repetitive. I'm going to create the paintings all at the same time. So the reason I'm doing an experiment with stored paints is because a lot of artists say that this is where you're most likely to see the problems when you mix your paints using tap water. The reason being, from what I understand, is that mould can form over time from impurities in the water. So I thought I'd mix up the paints and leave them stored for 4 weeks and then conduct the experiment. So that's what I'm doing now. So before pouring these paints, I gave each of them a good mix because they've been sat there for 4 weeks in storage. And I also just made sure that each of the paints were the same consistency, so it was fair across the board for each of the paintings. So my swipe colour I just put into a larger pot like this so that I could get my paper towel in there more easily. I've also mixed it with a couple of drops of coconut milk hair serum. This is what I use as silicone to create cells. So if you're subscribed to my channel, you'll notice this is very different from my usual videos, which are about learning how to create pour paintings and pendulum paintings. But I've never tested out whether my tap water would change my paints. I've always used distilled water to be on the safe side, so I thought it was about time I looked into it and thought I'd share my results with you. Okay, so it looks like we're nearly finished. I'm just torching off the paintings now. Let's go in and take a closer look. Okay, so first let's have a look at the paintings side by side. At initial glance, it doesn't look like there's much difference between all three of the paintings, but let's have a closer look. So let's start off with tap water. It doesn't look like there's much of a difference, but if you look closely, it looks like there's a bit of distortion with the cells, a bit of muddiness. And then with the filtered water, a little bit more of the same, but it doesn't look as bad. And now let's look at the distilled water. It looks like the cells are clear, there's no distortion. This does actually look like the better painting. And here are the dried results. I really don't think there's much difference in it. I would say that the distilled water painting is slightly better, hasn't got any distortions with the cells, but really not much difference. Let me know in the comments below if you've tried this experiment with your own tap water and if you saw a difference. Tap water is obviously different in each region and country, so it'd be interesting to hear what you found. But for myself, I think I'll stick to using distilled water. Thanks for watching and happy painting.